Hello guys, and welcome back to a brand new video. I haven't made one in a while. Sorry for the noise, my AC is on. I've been on a bit of a coding break. I just started this project today. I've just been focusing all of my energy on school. It's really hard though. Okay, so title of this video is Why the School System Works. Because I've been seeing throughout YouTube videos of there's this retard, sorry, not retard, idiot, um, challenge, stupidly challenged moron, called Boinaband, and I remember a few years ago he made a video on why, you shouldn't stay in school, uh, and I thought, maybe he does have a point. You don't really use math that much, or you don't really use history that much, but I, today, not today, but I mean in recent times, I've come to realize how much of a moron that he has been and how uneducated he is because of that. Because here's the thing, school system has been around for quite a while now, and it has been because it's worked, and there is a reason for that. So this is in the defense of the school system. Now this isn't going to jump into public schools or private schools, stuff like that. This is simply the subjects that they teach and why they are taught and why each of them is important, even if they don't play directly into your career. Now, I guess I have been thinking more about this because I just joined this New York Policies Club that my friend Kyle made. We had our first meeting today. It was a lot of fun. We basically just debated the stop and frisk controversial policy. But anyways, I'm just going to be coding in the background. But let's start off with math. Actually, no, that's not a good place to start. Let's start off with English. What should you be doing in English? Now, mind me, not all of these arguments might be valid for every single school, depending on the quality of education. Me personally, I go to a private school, so I'm lucky enough to have, my private school's really good, and I'm lucky enough, and I'm super grateful for it, that all goes to my parents, but I'm very lucky to go to a school with a really good education. I understand that not all public schools have great education, just because of funding, which isn't anybody's fault, but the I don't know. It's really not anybody's fault, but that just means distribution of wealth and taxes needs to be spread out a little more to accommodate all of the public schools equally, because it's a public service, not supposed to make some schools really good and others not very good. Anyways, so English. Let's start off with English. What should you be doing ideally in English class? Well, you should be reading, of course, reading Shakespeare, and I'll go through each of these points. You should be reading Shakespeare. You should be writing essays, writing analytical paragraphs, and I think, constructing arguments. You should also probably be talking about current events, analyzing current events and applying those analytical skills, analyzing skills to current events, but that shouldn't take up any more than 1/4 of your class, because again, it's called English class. Now, why is this important? Well, in my school, I feel like my school has mastered English. It's actually one of the most useful subjects you can learn, because those who do well in English are good at analyzing and constructing arguments, writing essays, and let's go one by one through each of those things. Number 1, analyzing. Analyzing is one of the most important things that you can do. Analyzing helps you gather all the information about a situation and then forming a thesis around that and then constructing an argument with supporting evidence. Why is this important in life? Well, it's good for making really complicated decisions, especially political ones, where you have to gather information about the situation around you and then make a list of possible decisions that you could make, and then build an argument for each one. And through those arguments, you can choose that decision, narrow it down into the best possible and best decision that you can make. So that's just one example. Reading. Everybody needs to know how to read, and those who don't aren't any less of a human. Um, and they but it is important that they should know how to read. And of course, you shouldn't shame anybody for not knowing how to read because that's not really their fault. Maybe they had other obligations, but but literature is very important because reading is a way of gathering that information that I was talking about when you're like learning how to analyze. And sorry, let's go back to the analyzing situation first. Analyzing. Um, Analyzing allows you to really go deep into a situation and really see what somebody's saying, reading the subtext. So, analyzing, for example, in a lot of current events, there are these figures that say things, and people blindly follow them. For example, Trump. I don't really want to go into politics, but this is the biggest example. Trump, during the January 6th insurrection, he, in my opinion, incited the insurrection, whether you agree with me or not, but what we can all agree about is he did raise the temperature to the degree that it was, to the point where they did go through with an insurrection. So, whether you believe it was his fault directly or not, it was his responsibility that he raised the stakes to the temperature that they were at. And these people who went through with the insurrection, they were quote-unquote following Trump's orders, right? But what analyzing allows you to do is really read into it, and I don't mean literally read, but I mean just like really think about what he's saying, take in all of the context, and really try to analyze what he's saying, and maybe you'll uncover like a deeper truth. Or like a deeper reasoning, because he was like calling them special, and maybe if people analyze that situation, they'd be saying, oh, he's just trying to spoil us basically with all this name calling, or I don't know what you call it, like pampering, like calling them special to make them think that he's on their side, and then they do whatever that they want for him. But anyways, main point is analyzing allows you to read into a deeper meaning, which allows you to make better decisions and to understand a situation better. And in my opinion, it's the closest that anybody will ever be able to get into reading people's minds. Then writing essays, that's just a fundamental thing that you should know how to do, even if you don't use it. Like, you'll need to use it in your college application and other stuff. A lot of it's just applicable to a lot of things, especially if you go into politics, or you become like a government major, or if you want to be a political scientist. All of these people's anything that has to do with writing, like some sort of book or article, or or maybe you're a historian, you're gonna need to know how to write an essay. So I think the main thing about English is that it helps you develop skills that make you make good decisions and really allow you to make more educated decisions and be more educated about the world around you. And all of the content that we read, such as Shakespeare, the point of that is to they're your training grounds. All of these books, whether they are relevant to the current day or not, Shakespeare is, by the way, even though that's one of the fascinating things about Shakespeare, even though it's taking taking place so long ago, it's still relevant today, and you can see many factors of Shakespeare in today's society. And I would only know that if I knew how to analyze, which I would only know if I took interest, or not interest, if I just understood what was happening in English class. Of course, this is all ideally speaking. And yeah, so just makes you overall better life decisions, more educated about current events, and any sort of situation. Now, I think English is a good transition point to history. I'm going to try to shorten that because I spent 10 minutes talking about English. History. Similar thing with English, except more political. Sure, we're learning about the past, but one of the interesting things about history is that it tends to repeat itself because human behavior is pretty predictable, to be honest. And yeah, I mean, monkey see, monkey do. I mean, that's the saying, anyways. But anyways, historian. Learning history is very important to understanding politics, and politics is a extremely important part in everybody's life, no matter where you are, because politics decides or it regulates how you want to be governed, and you ultimately have a say or should have a say in how you want to be governed. And if you don't make the correct political choices, you could end up with somebody like really bad. Let's just put it that way. Trump. You could end up with somebody really bad, but overall, it's good to study history because helps you understand. Here's a good example. A good way to avoid f- electing a bad president is by researching that president, which you learn in history class. You develop those skills in history class and learning the history of that person. And the other good way is to research people who might be similar to, or sorry, to research people from the past or learn about people from the past throughout history, such as bad dictators, and see what they did and see if any of their actions are similar to that of this electee. I think that's the word. But anyways, history makes you good to make good political choices based on the past because the past is important and must be studied in order to avoid future or present day repetitions, bad repetitions. And yeah. Okay, moving on from history. That was relatively short because it ties in very closely with the English, but I feel that it's more closely related to politics and making good political choices. And as I said before, politics is one of the most important things in somebody's life, in my opinion, because your political choices affect everybody that is to come, all of the future generations, because one of the cool things about history is everything is just one straight domino effect. One thing leads to another, which leads to another, which leads to another. That's the whole idea of history. So that's why I think politics is important, because politics is plays one of the biggest roles in history. So make the correct political choices. That's what history is really for. Science. Science is a little harder for me to defend. But here is my defense for science. With all of the technology around us, everything, all of the conveniences such as cars, electronics, PCs, all of our cures for different diseases or vaccines for everything else, for all of those to exist, people need to be innovating and researching and delving into science. And that would only happen if they got interested in science by some form or fashion. That's why I think the science curriculum is very loose. You hop between biology, physics, and all of those different fields. And in the end, I feel that those subjects are really just ways to introduce the subject and learn deeply, and then see if and hopefully somebody in their class, in that science class, will get interested and become one of those scientific innovators and develop new technologies to help the world. That's my defense for science. It's a little harder to defend because it's the least applicable to life, but it is also important in the sense that you know where you come from, know your roots, know how the world around you works, especially when you're trying to make change in like um, in global warming policies, all that stuff. It's important to know that stuff, in which case I think that's where biology plays in. Physics plays in to a lot of sciencey subjects. For example, computer science, physics, that's important. And yeah, anyways, moving on from science, which is it's good to know how the world works. Makes you more educated, and although you might not use it in your day-to-day life, it will silently help you make better decisions based on facts, like just rules of the universe, right? Um, Such as knowing that the Earth revolves around the sun. That probably affects the Earth in some way, in which case if we hijack or piggyback right off of that information, we can, like, I don't know, make crops grow better or something. Who knows? I don't know. I live in the city. I'm not into crop growing. Anyways, math. Now, math, I hate this subject to the absolute most, but it is the most important subject. Well, no, it's not the most important subject. It is one of the most important subjects, in my opinion, because although so many people oh, I never use math, I'm never going to use math. You use math all the time. When you start paying your bills, you're going to need to know math in order to pay them correctly, do the calculations. Make sure there were no mistakes in the calculations. You're going to need to know how to do math when you're paying for a check and you want to pay a tip to somebody. And yes, those are more basic mathematical skills, but and so people might be saying, oh, but what about the more complicated stuff like parabolas? I absolutely hate those, and I do find a lot of them pointless, or it feels very pointless. But the main argument for for those math skills to be developed is, number one, introducing a lot of people to the concepts, hoping that at least some of them will take interest in them. And two, so many fields require it. So many of these technology fields or science fields or really most fields require some sort of higher math, or at least fields that are very complicated or are very important. Um, so for example, if you're gonna be like a soldier, or you want to sign up for the army, yeah, sure, you might not need to know math as much. If you want to become a plumber or something, yeah, you're not gonna need to know math as much. But let's say you want to be a scientist, you're gonna need to know math, complicated math. If you want to be a programmer, you're gonna need to know complicated math. Same with architects. Same with software engineers. And engineers in general. I'd assume mechanics, physicists, biologists. Literally, there are countless and countless and countless of subjects that require math. If you want to be an investor, hell, if you want to be an investor, you could probably use complicated math to try to create predictions or probabilities, make probabilities as to how much a certain company will increase, right? Even investments will can benefit from math. There's just so many subjects that are just better because of complicated math. And all of the complex things that we hold today, such as phones, keyboards, computers, all of those were made because of math. Now, sure, if you want to be like, fucking factory worker, yeah, you're not going to need to know math, but I'd hope that people aim higher than factory worker. And yes, arts, sure, you might not need to know that, but, if you work in arts, like, nothing wrong with that. It's basically English. It's like taking English class to the next level, and that kind of stuff to the next level. But in the end, if you're going into arts, I doubt you're going to be making that much money anyways, in which case knowing math, like, it just doesn't really matter whether you know it or not. Yeah, anyways, sorry, no, I didn't mean that. That was just me saying a bad joke. But anyways, math is extremely important in almost everything. And one of that, and that moron boy in a band who made that, that's the channel name of that moron who was like, oh, don't stay in school. Yeah, stay in school. You need to. You need to be educated. It has been scientifically proven that societies work better when more people are educated. That's just how the world works. Um, sorry, not the world works. That's just how humans work, and how societies work. Obviously, this person is uneducated. But yeah. What other classes are there? Drama. That's good for public speaking, acting. But mainly public speaking. And sure, you might not be like a TEDx person, but like, what if you're presenting to your team on a company? Yeah, you're going to have to know how to be a good public speaker. If you want to be any sort of leader or boss of any kind, whether it be a small boss or a great big boss, you are going to have some sort of authoritarian voice, or some sort of voice that projects, authority. Otherwise, people won't do the things that you tell them to do, because they won't see any real threat because of the way um, they perceive you. And those skills, yes, they can be. You can be a natural at them, but they're best developed through a drama class, a public speaking class, something like that. Um, let's see. Our class is really chill. I don't see why anybody wouldn't have any complaints about our class. Like, you sit there, draw, make clay statues, and talk with friends. That's really it. What is there to complain about? Um, but yeah, that's it. Oh, languages, major one. Languages are important because especially in the world we live in, where there are so many countries with a diverse population of many different nationalities who sometimes all speak different languages. Um, Especially if you're working for a corporation. Like, you're gonna have to talk to people who are outside of the country, because most likely that corporation has expanded and has globalized. In which case, you're gonna be talking to people outside their country, and knowing their language is a great way to connect with them. Also, knowing another language can just lead to other stuff. Yeah, no, I'm kind of blanking and grasping at straws for this one, but I'd say it is good, just to diversify your view on the world, and it's better for communication. And isn't that one of the great things humans pride themselves on? The fact that they can communicate with people across the world, within like seconds or milliseconds, on FaceTime calls. People can communicate from halfway across the world, and with barely any lag. That's incredible, right? And language is part of that communication, sharing ideas and sharing knowledge. Even if you're a scientist, you're not going into any linguistics, but sharing your knowledge with other scientists. There are many scientists, great scientists from all around the world, so communicating with them in their language, pretty cool. I was seesawing on the word cool and good, but pretty cool and pretty good, right? It's a great skill to learn. If I am a world-renowned scientist in America who wants to share and create better ideas with some sort of Spanish scientist who might have his own ideas, and if we combine our knowledge, we could make something even greater. Then me learning Spanish, there's benefits of that, right? And of course, if you want to be a translator, that's also a profession. um, Latin, Latin goes into linguistics and history, for that matter. But most schools don't have that, which is why I'm not talking about it. Mainly just private schools. My school, you were required to take Latin. My Latin teacher is actually from Harvard, which is crazy. um, yeah. Anyways, that's all. Thanks for watching. I didn't wind up coding, but That's in the defense of school.